Good evening. We welcome you here. We call to order the regular meeting of West Valley City Council. We note that we have 6 members of the council present. Councilwoman Karen Lang is excused tonight. With that, we will begin with an opening ceremony with Don Christensen.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Lang was scheduled to do the opening ceremony, but she received sorry about that, it brings back memories. She received a call from the hospital this morning, her husband did, and his mother is on her last legs and passing away. And so she called me and said, could you take it and do it for me? I think I should be with my husband and his mother. And I said, that's exactly where you should be. And it brings back memories because about 5 years ago, it happened to me the same way. Middle of meetings and everything else, and you get a call saying it's time to come. So, as we stand and pledge allegiance to our flag tonight, would you please also remember Councilmember Lang and her family? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. No scouts here tonight or elected officials. So we'll go to our minutes of October 3rd. Motion on the minutes.
Move for approval of the minutes of October 3rd.
Second.
Properly before us. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passes unanimously. The minutes are approved. Next, we go to our comment period. We didn't have anyone sign up, or at least not yet, but we will be making a slight change, not here in this meeting, but when a public comment is made, we will make note of the subject matter and we will add that to our agenda for council meeting the next week. Part of the reason for doing that is that generally for us to discuss items in this meeting, especially if it deals with any policy, by state law it must be on our agenda. We can maybe make a couple of comments, be fine, but we really can't or shouldn't discuss policy without announcing it to the public to give them an opportunity to come here and to listen to that discussion and be aware that we were going to do that. This will allow us then to have it on our agenda where we may discuss it in detail or not. So just be aware that we will add the topic then to our agenda under Mr. Powell said it would be under our future agenda items, which means that we will not take any action on it there, certainly, but may consider it for future study, discussion, or something else, but at least it will be on our agenda. With that then, we open it to the public. Is there anyone here to make some comments? A quiet night. Okay. Seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back here. Mr. Powell, any comments from you tonight?
None tonight, sir. Thank you.
Okay, council members, any comments you want to bring up? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go to item 7 on our agenda. This is where we will discuss application ZT-4 2017 filed by Raymond Crane. It's an ordinance amendment change to criteria found in our code for property that's eligible to be rezoned for multiple unit dwelling residential or RM. The section of the code is dealing with where properties must have, in the past it said that they would have access on and frontage on a street with a planned right-of-way width of at least 80 if it's a small piece, 2 acres or less, or 100 feet wide for 2 acres or larger. Let's see, where was it? Oh, the property shall either have access, and the way it reads now, and frontage on a street with a planned right-of-way. The recommendation, the request of an individual was that shall either have access or frontage on a street with a planned right-of-way width, as I mentioned. So although that's a one-word change, it changes the possibilities in a fairly significant way. And this is actually related to a piece of property, let's see, the northeast corner of 60th West and 4100 South. That is the introduction to the issue, and so we will now open it for public comment. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I appreciate this time that you've offered to us to be able to speak on this. My name is Raymond Crane. I'm the one that turned in the recommendation for the proposal. So the proposal actually has two purposes in it. One is to allow for more options of development to be brought forward to the council to be voted upon. Thus, it allows us to look at what's the best option for each individual property. And so you as a council can make the best decision for that property and for the growth of West Valley City. The second reason that I chose to bring this up as far as among the council to have this ordinance changed and adjusted is that the safety issue that it proposes to have it be worded and, creates the stipulation that the property or any development for RM zoning must have that exit leading onto a busy road that's 80-foot width or wider, and which could lead to more accidents and more hindrance to the public safety. We actually had, as you remember last month, we had Mark Chadwick, who's also a citizen, that came and complained about the entrance that he had onto 3500 South by way of Mary Lane. So with that, he was urging the council to, with three suggestions that he had to be able to put either a lighted intersection or to do something to be able to eliminate the dangers that they had in that area and for his residents, his fellow residents in his neighborhood. So with those two purposes, as far as one, to bring more options up to the council and individual developments, and also for the safety of the public is why I bring this up and forward to you. Is there any questions that I can answer for you tonight?
Here's not, so.
Not really a question, more of a discussion.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you very much.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this? Seeing no one else here to speak, we will close the public comment period, public input. And with that, we will bring it back to the council now for consideration of ordinance 17-36, which would be the language to make that change with this application. To the council then. I think Councilman Vincent, you were...
Well, I just part of the discussion, I think just a continuation of what we talked about last week, that this one little change doesn't just affect this one piece of property, but potentially multiple pieces of property throughout the city. And in probably a lot of those cases, which we don't know because we haven't seen those parcels, I think could be a detriment to what our initial idea was with this, is to make sure these types of developments fell in a particular area or particular zone. And so I'm not in favor of moving forward with it for this piece of property, just because I'm afraid that it's going to have a negative effect on other pieces of property throughout the city.
Councilman Bueller?
Thank you. Just to continue along these lines, it's not this proposed use for this property, this proposed development that really concerns me. I don't have a problem with it per se, but it needs to go a place where it fits and complies with the ordinances as they are. It really concerns me to change an ordinance looking at a very small parcel, and while it is true that further applications will still have to come through the council, I think it's an invitation and a creation of misunderstanding for other developers if it says this or that, because they look at that and just think, well, I have one of those, so I ought to be able to do this, and I either have the frontage or I have the access, so I don't have to have both anymore. It's loosened it up, and now we'll make that application. I think we'd be seeing a lot of these that we wouldn't want to approve, and I think that the ordinance, as it is now, is what we intended when we passed it not so very long ago. And for that reason, I'm not in favor of it either.
Maybe a question to our city manager, Mr. Pyle. With this type of situation where there's concern about changing this wholesale for the city, what options would the council have about this particular piece of property if they wanted to make a change just for that? How would that work, or is that even possible?
I believe, and probably I would want Nicole and or Steve to speak to this, just because Steve's more
Okay.
Steve's more familiar with the project itself, and Nicole's more familiar with land use law. But I think you could accomplish that. There are probably tools like development agreement by which you could make that happen
Without changing the ordinance?
without changing the ordinance itself.
Okay. Would you like
So I don't
to?
know if any other options like that have been considered, but that's why I would defer to Steve on the issue to see if there have been other options that have either been considered or that he would just be knowledgeable of that are possible.
So one option would be to more narrowly define when this exception would be applicable. So right now it says, access or frontage. You could put in other qualifiers, for example, the size of the property or other descriptions. Maybe it's on certain streets where you could further refine where an exception would be possible. So there are ways to further refine that, but essentially, as staff, we were just presenting what the applicant had proposed.
Well, maybe to further explain my point of view, if anybody really is interested, but we had, not too long ago, we sat here for about an hour and listened to people telling us what a great use this gentleman had put on his property where he had brought buffalo into the city, and how great this was and how important it was, and it stops gangs and it gives kids a place to learn how to work and all kinds of things. And I don't really have a problem with what he was doing and trying to accomplish there, but we can't just allow everybody to have buffalo, and we can't just allow him to have buffalo. When we're looking at an ordinance change, we're painting with a very broad stroke, and I always approach that cautiously.
So from a land use issue, I mean, without changing the ordinance, can we approve some sort of variance or some sort of conditional use?
So what would be the options along that line, Steve?
So my understanding, and Nicole can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but because the ordinance basically says you can't apply unless you meet these criteria, I don't think we could accept an application short of an actual ordinance change.
Is that correct, Nicole?
Yep, that's correct. In this particular case, the only way to accommodate would be the way that Steve mentioned. We could narrowly tailor the request to specifically apply to this parcel, but you would need to have an ordinance change for this purpose.
Okay, thank you.
So just looking at that, I would think that we couldn't do it unless you crafted it some way that I do know that we don't have too many state highways, divided highways of multiple lanes and that are within so many feet of a major intersection for one of those. But
Yeah, I
that's
think,
the only thing I can think of.
yeah, I think it's clear that with this application, that it would be dangerous to exit onto 41, so I think that is clear. But I'm like Steve, I don't want to make a sweeping change for
No.
one parcel.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just looking to see if there was a way that that could possibly be done. So obviously tonight we can't do that because we don't have the language, we aren't prepared to do it. But maybe we could have staff take a look at that and see if there is something that could be very narrowly crafted for the issue of safety where the traffic volumes and proximity to a major intersection would override that. I don't know. Maybe we can't, maybe the language can't be done, but
So if that's what we decide to do, then I think rather than even vote on this tonight, we would just continue it and allow the staff to work on some language. Is that what that?
Yeah, certainly we can, and we can come up with something that would be more narrowly tailored to the site and the property, so we certainly will, if the council would like us to do that. I would point out that, as has been stated by a couple of council members, when we went through the discussion crafting this ordinance in the first place, the council themselves specifically chose the "and" criteria here for very basic development reasons.
well, I would want to see the "and" still there, and that the only time an exception might be made is in very narrow circumstances. When I look at this intersection and I think of, the access there, that is a bit of a concern. But I don't want to change it and then have, changes all over the, many different properties across the city. So I don't know what exactly those criteria would be, but it would seem to me that maybe there's a way to do it, maybe not. If there's not a way that, if we changed it and it opened the door for multiple changes across the city, then I would say, no, let's not change anything. But if we could do it in a very select circumstance, then maybe that's worthwhile.
And just a question for Steve. As I look at this, even the exit onto 60th West, I wonder if that's even too close to the intersection. Is there some requirement that we would have for even that driveway onto 60th?
Right, so that where 60th is a city road, Public Works would have requirements there, but just again off the cuff, I think at least a right-in, right-out would be possible, and I don't know if Dan has further thoughts on that, but I would say at least you could do a right-in, right-out at that location.
And I know that UDOT along 56 West, where there's a couple of these high-density properties, that they've actually put a median just in front of those entrances to force that issue. So,
Right. Yeah, especially if you have, if you've got stacking for left turns there, then almost by default you end up having that situation.
it's not fun for the people that live there.
Any more questions for Steve? If not, thank you, and it's still with the council. Everyone's thinking just for a moment. That's okay.
I'll make a motion to continue to allow the staff to maybe look at some options to reword the ordinance that would narrow the criteria.
Second.
properly before us. I think it's clear that that would have to be very narrowly crafted. Very narrowly.
And with this, it might just be that off-ramp that constitutes that. I mean, there's that new off-ramp from New Highway, it's right there, on-off-ramp.
Perhaps limited to a proximity to Mountain View Corridor and Bangor Highway, something like that, controlled access highways, or some way we could maybe get around that and make it work.
Okay.
Okay. Motion is properly before us. Any further discussion? Seeing no further comments, to our city recorder for the roll call vote.
Councilman Vincent?
Yes.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilman Hume?
Aye.
Councilman Christensen?
Yes.
Councilman Nordfeld?
Yes.
Mayor Bigelow?
Aye.
Motion for continuance passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Next we go to resolutions. We have first resolution 17-159, authorizing the city to enter into an agreement with the West Valley Redevelopment Agency and West Valley Land Holdings for the commercial development here at Fairborn Station. And this is the developer. I'm just looking at the synopsis on this so that it's clear. Construct a 9-story, 225,000 square foot Class A office tower on property located north of the new public safety building. And it'll have a sky bridge connecting to the parking structure. And then there'll be options to pursue further development on this corner: office, retail, hospitality, etc. And there are certain milestones in place to do that. That is the issue before us. To the council then.
Mayor, move for approval of resolution 17-159.
Second.
Properly before us, any further discussion?
I'd like to make a comment.
Certainly.
Ran into this when we entered into an agreement with respect to the hotel, and it had a similar name, the company, the developer there, West Valley something or other. And some people have a confusion that this is really an entity of the city, that the city is building this, paying for it, and so forth. And I just want to make a comment that this is, the West Valley Land Holdings LLC is not part of the city, it's a private developer.
Thank you. Good clarification. Some people have the same problem with Utah Transit Authority. They think it's a state organization, and it's not. Although, who knows, maybe it will be in a year or two. Okay, any further comments? If not, to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Nordfeld?
Yes.
Councilman Christensen?
Yes.
Councilman Hume?
Aye.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilman Vincent?
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next, we have Resolution 17-160. This is a contract to Quicksilver Concrete for the 56 West Sidewalk Gap Project. There are 2 pieces of sidewalk missing area, I guess we'll say it, where there is no sidewalk. This will complete that and make it a pedestrian passway in conjunction with 5600 West. All the way, I guess it goes up, is that 3100 South?
29 South.
29 South, that's right. And right there to the corner, and so very appropriate. And I didn't call that up, but I got to just look at the cost on that. I think we probably are allowed to mention that. There we go, $40,000, Class C road funds and state funds. So, and that's between 2856 South and 29 South, it says, so. And between Parkway Boulevard and the Veterans Administration, those 2 pieces. With that introduction then to the council.
I move approval of resolution 17-160.
Second.
Properly before us, any further discussion? Seeing none, to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Vincent?
Yes.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilman Hume?
Aye.
Councilman Christensen?
Yes.
Councilman Nordfeld?
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
There's no need for an executive session, and so our regular city council meeting, we're ready for a motion to adjourn, and then we have a special redevelopment agency meeting immediately following this.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Our regular city council meeting is now adjourned.
We call to order the Westway City Redevelopment Agency tonight. Every council member is here tonight except Councilwoman Karen Lan excuses tonight. Resolution 17-12, and I will turn it over to City Manager Wen Paya.
Thank you, sir. So yes, this single item on the agenda for the evening is basically a mirror item for your consideration as the RDA board as opposed to the city council, in which you adopted this same approval to move forward with an ADL for private development between the city, the RDA, and West Valley Land Holdings, which was appropriately pointed out as being a private development partner. This would be in the Fairborn Station project area, and we're looking very much forward to making this project go forward.
Super excited. Thank you so much. I will turn it over to the council.
We don't have the Nord girls here today, but despite that deficiency, I'll move for approval of Resolution 17-12.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second, and I will turn it over to the city recorder. People comment.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Mr. Bueller?
Aye.
Mr. Bigelow?
Aye.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Nordfeld?
Yes.
And Chairman Hume?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And we have one more motion, and
Move to adjourn.
thank you. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we adjourn.